Hi, I'm Lily Simon, and this is part 3 of my 1.3 cardiovascular system assignment. So here we're going to be talking about the conduction system, and here we're saying about the sinoatrial node, and it starts with the sinoatrial node, which is also known as a pacemaker. And this sinoatrial node is a group of really specialised cells in the wall of the right atrium, which coordinates the contraction of the heart and is also very important so that we influence and affect the SA node, particularly when we exercise, as it sends an impulse through the heart much more quickly. So from the SA node, it goes an impulse down the AV node, which is down here, but it also spreads through the atria. So from the SA node down to the AV node, through the septum, along the bundle of His, which is down here, and then divides into the bundle branches, the left and right branch, which takes you to the left and right ventricle of the heart, which takes you to the Purkinje fibres. So basically an impulse will spread from the SA node to the AV node and through the atria, which this creates atrial systole. It will then continue from the AV node to the bundle of His to the bottom of the heart before going back up the Purkinje fibres to create the ventricular systole. So now we're going to be talking about the general information to do with the autonomic neural influence on the cardiac cycle. So some general information here, we talk about the autonomic nervous system, which is also known as the ANS, and this controls and stimulates the muscle tissue. Then we move on to the SNS, which is the sympathetic nervous system, and this is where they release hormones, which is norepinephrine and epinephrine, and this is to do with the fight or flight. And then we have the parasympathetic nervous system, or the SNS still, and this is one of the diversions of the autonomic nervous system, which is based between the brain and the spinal cord, that shows the heart and relaxes the muscles. And then we just have some general information about the medulla oblongata, which is located in the brain, in the stem, and found in the cerebellum, and it helps transfer messages down through the spinal cord and the thalamus. So the cardiac cycle in our heart can be influenced by either neural control or hormonal control. The cardiac cycle controls the centre, and the ANS controls the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. So the neurotransmitters norepinephrine and epinephrine are the two hormones that are released in response to emergencies within the body, and this increases the amount of beats per minute the heart creates. So the parasympathetic nervous system regulates organ and gland functions during rest and is considered a slowly activated and a dampening system. The medulla oblongata is located in the brainstem and anterior, which is in front of the cerebellum. This is a cone-shaped neuronal nerve cell mass in the hind brain, which controls a number of autonomic or involuntary functions. So the autonomic nervous system regulates the functions of our internal organs, such as the heart, the stomach, and the intestines. The ANS is a part of a peripheral nervous system, and it's also controlled some of the muscles within the body. So if we want to decrease our heart rate, a different neurotransmitter, which is called ACH or acetylcholine, will also be released. So then we talk about the hormonal influence on the cardiac cycle. So here we talk about adrenaline is a hormone or hormonal influence on the cardiac cycle. So it helps to stimulate our heart rate. It is found in the adrenal glands, which is just above our kidneys. So it will send an impulse to be sent down the sympathetic nervous system, and this stimulates a release of a hormone, which will then be released into our bloodstream and then into our heart. And then when it reaches the heart, it will then increase the heart rate. Now we're going to be moving on to blood and blood vessels. So blood is a bodily fluid in animals that delivers necessary substances such as nutrients, oxygen to the cells and transports the metabolic waste products away from those same cells. The components of the blood include plasma and red blood cells, white blood cells and cell fragments called platelets. So the blood delivers necessary nutrients and oxygen to the cells. It supplies oxygen, it carries blood to and from the heart, and it also happens with gas exchange. So blood plays an important role in regulating the body's systems and also maintaining homeostasis. And it performs many functions within the body, so including supplying oxygen to the tissues, supplying nutrients such as glucose and amino acids and fatty acids, either dissolved in the blood or bound in the plasma proteins. Also removing waste such as carbon dioxide and urea and lactic acid. And it also has immunological functions, including circulation of white blood cells and detecting the foreign materials by the antibodies. And it's also a messenger function, including the transportation of hormones and the signalling of tissue damage. So we have blood structure, and the blood consists of many different components. So these include 55% of plasma, 45% of components such as blood cells, 99% are erythrocytes, which are the red blood cells, 1% are the leukocytes, which are the white blood cells, and then you also have the platelets and the plasma. So a red blood cell is an immature erythrocyte which has a nucleus, and a mature erythrocyte has no nucleus. So the hemoglobin relies on the presence of iron, and the hemoglobin combines with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. The erythrocytes are eventually broken down by the spleen in the blood pigments, and these components are then transported by the blood in the liver to the liver, where the iron is then recycled for use. So the white blood cells have longevity of a few hours to a few days. They're approximately 5,000 to 10,000 leukocytes per microliter of blood, and this is a major part of the immune system. And platelets, blood platelets are cell fragments, and they're approximately disc-shaped fragments, and they have a diameter of 2 to 4 micrometers. So 1 micrometer is really, really small compared to a millimeter. And plasma is a large component of the human blood, which is comprised of white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets. The liquid substance carries all of these cells throughout the body and transports other important biomolecules which are needed. So plasma makes up approximately 55% of the blood in the human body, which is, when isolated from the blood, it is yellow in colour. The primary purpose of this plasma is to transport materials throughout the whole human body. It transports cells, nutrients, salts, enzymes, hormones and proteins all throughout the body whenever these compounds are needed. Blood plasma also helps to transport blood throughout the body. So here we now talk about the blood vessels and their structure and their functions. So blood vessels are really important. They're specialised networks of hollow tubes that transport blood throughout the entire body. This is an important function as blood delivers valuable nutrients to our cells and also removes waste to our cells. Blood vessels are constructed of layers of connective tissue and muscle, and the inner blood vessel layer is formed by an endothelium. So the different types of blood vessels are arteries, arterioles, capillaries, veins and venules. So The arteries, the function of an artery is to transport the blood away from the heart, and they tend to carry deoxygenated blood away from the heart, and it also has a very small lumen. So due to the small lumen in the arteries, blood moves in this section under very high pressure. This means that the functions of the arteries include them being most elastic in the tunica, but also having thick walls and larger blood vessels to be able to withstand the pressure of the blood being pumped from the heart way to the body. Then we talk about arterioles, and the function of these arterioles is to transport blood from the arteries to the capillaries. These control the blood flow into the capillary bed and are responsible for the redistribution of blood and pressure. The structure of these arterioles includes having tiny branches of arteries that lead to capillaries. They are thick-walled and have small diameter, so the blood is redistributed without damaging the walls, and is also made up of elastic and smooth muscle tissue. And then we go on to capillaries. The function of these capillaries is to supply the tissues of the blood with the components of blood. It serves the function of removing the waste from the surrounding cells, and in the capillaries there's an exchange of oxygen, carbon dioxide, water, and also other substances between the blood and the surrounding tissues. These structures of the capillaries are subdivided from the arterioles. They are only one cell thick as well, and this allows exchange of the substances between the contents of the capillaries and the surrounding tissue. And then we go on to the veins. Veins can be described as a low-pressure reservoir, as they take blood back towards the heart and transport the stored blood around the body during a physical activity. The blood travels at low pressure in the veins. This means that the structure does not have to be prepared to receive high pressure. The veins have a thick tunica and consist of 3 different types of layers of tissues that are thinner and less elastic than the arteries. It also contains smooth muscle and elastic muscle tissue, but also contains valves too. This is because the blood is at a low pressure, so the backflow of the blood is more likely to occur in the veins, in the arteries, so the valves present in and available to stop this from happening. And lastly, we'll talk about the venules. The function of these venules is to drain blood from the capillaries into the veins and then return back to the heart. It's also essential for the collection of overflow of the blood from the capillary bed at a low pressure. And the structure of these venules are described as being a minute vessel. So they are smaller than veins and contain connective tissue. And many of these venules combine together to make a vein. So here we just have the structural characteristics of all those blood vessels. So we have arteries, contain smooth muscle fibres, and they have the structure, and then we have their function in blue, which is to transport blood away from the heart and transports oxygenated blood only. Arterioles have tiny branches of arteries that lead to capillaries. They also constrict and dilate to regulate the blood flow. Go back. And the capillaries are tiny and very narrow, and they are 5 to 20 micrometers in diameter and also only 1 cell thick. And this supplies the body with the components of blood, and also happens with the exchange of oxygen, carbon dioxide, water, and salts. The venules are very minute and drain blood from the capillaries into the veins and then return back to the heart. And the veins consist of 3 layers of tissues, and thinner and less elastic than the corresponding arteries, and they transport blood towards the heart and carry deoxygenated blood. So all of the blood vessels have an inner lining called endothelium. This layer is simply a sheet of tissue that reduces the friction in the heart and the vessels, which allows the blood to flow easily. And also, the venous system acts as a reservoir of blood.